Hey everybody, John Finn. You know, one of the biggest questions we get is, what do you do about the kids? And so let's talk about the kids a little bit, and also second to that, what about the money? How do you handle that in a house church? Well, the first thing, talking about the kids, and trust me, we have had families who have left one of our house churches, different places in the network, and the moms admit to us, you know what, when I go to the auditorium church, I love house church, but when I go to the auditorium church, I can take my kids to the nursery and to toddlers church and children's church, and we've had more than one mom say, I need that break. I look forward to 90 minutes to myself, talking to adults and in worship and able to sit and receive for myself. And they've said, at house church, I don't feel I can do that. I've always got to watch the kids. There's some truth to that, although there are also solutions to that. Because house church is really more of a way of life. It's a lifestyle than it is just going to something that you go to once a week. Because it involves the same thing that we see in Acts 2:42, where they steadfastly were in the apostles' doctrine, fellowship, breaking of bread, and prayer. And they were going house to house, breaking bread. They were steadfastly, which means house church is living intentionally towards one another. It's living purposefully towards one another. It's a commitment to meeting, it's a commitment to one another, it's a commitment to growing in the Lord. So how do you address that heart with a bunch of kids running around? Because in the auditorium church, that's built around separating the family, breaking up the family. The adults go one way, the babies go another, toddlers another one, children's church, elementary school goes another direction. Teenagers have their time, maybe on a Wednesday night, maybe on a Sunday morning, whatever the case is, but it's built around separating the family. House church, from Adam and Eve on, is all about the family together. To the synagogue system, to the day of Pentecost, it's all about the family being together. So what are the solutions? Most of the time in most house churches, things will gravitate towards people of the same season of life. When we first started in January of 2002, we grew rapidly. Pretty soon we had 4 house churches. And we made the mistake of just putting one couple in charge of each one, not realizing how burnt out they would get. And so we learned from that and realized that 2 or 3 couples and individuals need to be together. We've had one house church that was 4 single adults, and they rotated among themselves. But the rotating homes helps prevent burnout, because you only have to host once a month or once every 6 weeks or whatever. You could rotate between 6 or 8 homes, it doesn't matter. But what do you do with the kids? And so what happens is that most house churches, if you gravitate towards the season of life, when you first start out, you're going to have retired people versus young kids when a house church is starting out. But as it grows, you'll find that the people with young children often gravitate together, and the empty nesters gravitate together. But what do you do when you've got everybody thrown together, you're just starting out? What do you do with kids? Most of the time, small children can play at the feet of their mother or father, either at their feet or just behind them. If the house church is sitting kind of in a circle, and the kids can do that, most parents will bring things for their children to be entertained, things, drawing, games, quiet things like that, and they can play at their feet. Yes, kids learn by osmosis. One of the things you have to keep in mind is to keep the conversation G-rated, because kids do pick up things. So you can't talk about addictions and gruesomeness and everything going on in the world, and rape and murder and everything else, because you want to keep it geared towards young kids. Also, involving the children helps. What do you do with the kids? Involve them. Do illustrated sermon type thing, where you play out a parable, an example of something in the Gospels, and let the kids take part. I remember in one house church, I played one of the crowd. Like Jesus, we'd stand one of the kids up, and then everybody bunching around him, and then somebody played the woman with the hemorrhaging issue, trying to touch Jesus and just the hem of his clothes. You can get really creative, but most of the time the small children will play at their parents' feet, or they ought to be old enough, if they're older, to sit there quietly, at least during part of it. We have had house churches be tremendously creative with small babies. We had a house church who because they had like 3 babies and toddlers, or 3 or 4 in that house church, and needing the moms and dads to have a break, they would rotate within the house church to take those little kids off to another room and play with them for half an hour or 20 minutes or whatever, just so the mom and the dad could get a break. We had other house churches where they got more creative of children. We've had children that have been 5, 6, 7, 8 years old leading one of the house church meetings. The first time it happened, the parents called me or emailed me and said, you know, this is on our daughter's heart. Is it okay? Can she lead? And I was like, sure. We're there, you know, in your house, you're hosting, and with your guidance. And it was anointed. She brought out some things and asked some things of us. I remember it distinctly. She said, I want you to go around the circle here and tell the most favorite miracle in the Gospels that Jesus did, and then also the favorite miracle that he has done personally in your own life. And so as everybody shared, it was just anointed. The presence of the Lord was strong, all led by a little 8-year-old girl. And so this has happened many times. There's lots of creativity you can have with the children. We've had house churches where one of the moms felt led to take the kids aside for a little Sunday school lesson, and she'd take them aside into a kitchen or something like that and have, you know, workbooks and everything. And another one, it was like videos. It had videos going for the kids and some teaching and everything for about 45 minutes, and then bring the kids right back. You can be creative in how you handle the kids. And you know what? I've used up most of my time here. I'm going to start this with part 2 on what to do about money, because I've spent so much time with the kids. The thing is that house church should be a safe, secure place. And I want to say this when I'm dealing with kids. I want to add this in there, that the host and the hostess have the final word. If a door is closed, it's closed for a purpose. You don't have permission to go in there. If they say we have to be done by 12 noon because we've got to go to grandma's birthday party, then stop talking and keep your eye on the watch and realize they have to be done by 12 noon. They have to go. If somebody who is even in charge of the meeting starts to get off base or starts to get onto a topic that is more R-rated and gruesome in the nightly news that they don't want their little children to hear, they have the right to step in and say, whoa, 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 stop, back up. Let's not talk about this. Let's talk about it. Remember, kids are present. The homeowner, the host, the hostess, wherever you're meeting, whoever's in charge, you have the right, even if you're hosting but not leading the meeting, you have the right to set limits. And so because of that, you also have the right to limit who comes to your house. If you're not comfortable with a person, if somebody gives you the heebie-jeebies, then that's where you need to draw the line and just have a meeting of your core group and say, you know, I'm not comfortable with this person. Maybe it's somebody dealing with addiction. Maybe it's somebody who's into pornography or something, and you just get the weird vibes around them and you don't feel safe having them around your little children. It's your home. You have the final right of calling it yes or no, of inviting people in or not. And if you're not comfortable, there's reasons for that. And there's ways around that. We have had house churches who have had addicts who wanted to come, who are dealing with heroin addiction and other things. And they have had a separate Friday night Bible study to help these people, separate from the house church, separate from the kids, but a Friday night Bible study to minister to them. We had a situation with a man who was very into some sexual things that were perverted and addictions, and he was asked not to come to a house church, but was taken kind of under wing by a man in the church and checked with him once a week to get with him and to see if there was any progress. And I've got to tell you, after 30 days he made no progress, and he's never been back to that house church. We had a situation not in our network where I was invited to kind of referee with a house church, had 2 single men and middle-aged men who had a habit of pulling aside single middle-aged women and quote-unquote prophesying over them. And they did in such a way that gave the women the creeps, because they would stroke their hair, they talk in the first person, I, the Lord, love you, and whatever, and it was a romantic type of prophecy thing, and they always wanted to pull them aside to a bedroom or to a side room in private, and they wouldn't listen to the local house church leadership, so they called me in to read these guys the riot act and tell them what was right. And it could have been straightened out if the homeowner and if the host would have just said, either stop doing that or you're gone. So you have the backbone, you have the permission, you have the right as a homeowner to protect your children. It should be a safe place, it should be a secure place. So I didn't want to mention the kids and what do you do with kids without mentioning that part about the host or the hostess always having the right to call the shots. Even if they're not leading the meeting, they have the final word. All right, God bless.